Yeah, when I talked to Matt about coming and speaking here, he said, look, you know, you have to deal with all these boring big companies, and not everyone here is used to that experience. So why don't we talk a bit about that and the challenges of like scaling some of the things we've spoken about today. How do you scale empathy? How do you maintain a vigorous community and ability to talk to all of them when you're a company that might have 400,000 employees? So we came up with a title, thought it was kind of clever. It was Empathy for the Devil. So I thought, let's talk about having some empathy for the big companies. And kind of yesterday, I was at lunch with a guy called Alexis Richardson from Weaveworks. Tamo, I think, might be here and works with him. You might have heard from her earlier, giving some great tips about how Spirit's ambassadors is a good model for DevRel. Anyway, he said, no, you've got it wrong. It's actually Sympathy for DevRel. So great, OK, I'm going to throw out all my slides and start again. There's a guy called Alvaro Videla, and he said, well, obviously, if you're going to do that, it's you've got to run with this Rolling Stones team. So anyway, I am Monk Chips. Very noisy on Twitter. You probably shouldn't follow me if you're interested in high signal to noise. My company, RedMonk, we really focus on developer-led adoption of technology. So we're an industry analyst company. There's loads of those. Sort of, the big one is Gartner. It's very much about top-down adoption of technology. We're very much about bottom-up adoption of technology, basically by the kind of people that you're working with every day. So we spend a lot of time trying to understand the influence patterns to developers that gets platforms chosen and adopted more broadly. So yeah, Sympathy for the Devil. I think it's an interesting track in that the most famous aspect of that track is the woo-woo, right? And I did think about getting you all doing that, but Steve tried to get the crowd singing earlier, and I thought, actually, no, that's not going to work. Wait, should we do one? Woo-woo! Yeah. Woo-woo! Right, so the woo-woo was actually Jimmy Miller. He was the producer. So he's not in the Rolling Stones, he's the producer of the track, and he was messing around when they were recording it. And that was not actually supposed to be in the track. In fact, it ended up being re-recorded by the band themselves. And then, of course, what happened is the record company said, we really don't like that. That's really stupid. What you've got to do is get rid of the woo-woos, right? How different would history have been without the woo-woos, right? And that is what big companies will try and do to you every time. So you've got to sustain that energy. And when Jimmy Miller says, let's have some woo-woos, you've got to run with it. So, how do you know that you work for the man? OK, good. This hit really well. None of this material is mine. This is Alexis and Alvaro. Again, it's all about learning and packaging these community experiences and making them pop, which that just totally did. I think the Concur one in particular, who here has used Concur? If you haven't, you're really lucky, right? So, OK, I don't need to talk anymore to that slide. This is good. I've made progress. So let it bleed, right? So one of the things is that ROI thing. You have to spend money on DevRel. And the big companies understand this, and I think small companies have to understand this. Kind of interesting hearing from OutSystems today, because it's about their journey to DevRel, right? Been doing DevRel for 3 years. And there was a real sort of apology about it. A bit, sort of, well, actually, we're a commercial company, so we're not really sure DevRel was for us. And I'm like, what hippies did they think we were, right? So, it's like, OK, we're all here because we're trying to get people to adopt technology and, get paid, and, that's all good. So you've got to spend money to make money. And one of the things is, look, listen to the DevRel people. I mean, basically, it's just me ranting. Make sure that your bosses understand that the work you're doing is valuable. And yeah, sometimes you're going to spend way too much on beer. So that's OK. Paint it black. This is what not to do, right? We're not this is not Henry Ford. Developers want to have choices, and they're going to want to integrate and do weird and wonderful things with your technology. And not everything is going to be you can have anything you want as long as it's black. And I think this is super important. And again, something that DevRel tries to persuade the company of, tries to persuade the man of. And it's just super important that at the end of the day, there isn't just one choice. Get off my cloud. Obviously, no developer evangelist is going to say that, right? You're trying to do the opposite. But actually, in terms of this world of choice, sometimes you do. So, if you look at Google, they're like, actually, portability is important. The entire Kubernetes phenomenon has been about saying what Simon Phipps talked about earlier, freedom to leave, right? Open source gives you choices. And that actually, sometimes you're like, fine, we will support you to get off my cloud. But if you wouldn't mind getting on it first, that'd be wicked. Right, can't get no satisfaction. That's developers. Nightmare. The only thing they want to pay for is Macs. And you cannot please them no matter what you do. It just doesn't matter what you give them. They're gonna want more. You will get kicks in the nuts. There is, well, that's a bit gender specific. Code of conduct. Sorry, you will get kicked. You will get kicked. So anyway, I used to run an event space. And I gave it for free to certain communities that I thought were worth supporting. One was WordPress, London Node User Group, the London Java community. So they would use the space, and they got this stuff for free. And I'm not going to say which community it was, but I had this wonderful moment when everything had been free, but we'd found out that, look, can you at least, we're not going to pay for the pizzas. They wanted to buy from Pizza Hut, and we said, no, you can't. Look, can you use our supplier? Because that way we can at least make a couple of quid on this thing. And the next day I got a call. Do you know what? Way too many olives on the pizza. So people are not going to be happy. That goes without saying. You can't always get what you want. And I think this cuts both ways. As developer relations professionals, people doing DevRel, you can't always get what you want, but you might get what you need. You might get people adopting your technology. And I think the thing is, though developers they're not going to be satisfied, but things they do like, and they will from time to time like something, then it's not you doing the advocacy, it's them doing the advocacy. And I think that's what's so important about, that's where so much of the satisfaction about this role comes from. When when the developers you're talking to are actually your best advocates, that's just incredible. And obviously, that's what you're trying to achieve. So, one of the things that sort of hasn't been, I thought it might be a theme today, is what are the differences between the different disciplines that we do? And, some people are very keen to call advocacy, developer experience. They're all sort of related. And to bring that empathy thing in, I began to think, is empathy sort of where you are in the experience? So, developer advocacy, you've got empathy for the decisions that people are making, and you take that back, and you take it to engineering. So empathy is sort of back-ended. It's an after-the-fact thing. It's like you're listening, you're bringing that back. That's a strong advocacy position. Developer relations, that's sort of in the moment. You're doing your presentation, you're trying to bring people in, you're doing the demo that they like. Developer relations is empathy at the point. And actually, developer experience is all about empathy. It's about front-loading the empathy. And I think there are some critical things here. We're talking about inclusion. Code of conduct has to be part of DevRel. It's not just the events we go to. It has to be part of sustaining inclusive communities. Basically, you'll have better communities. I thought the point about language from Alex was absolutely on point. Language is super important. And thinking about that, the code of conduct, documentation is about front-loading empathy. Let's try and make this easy for people. Who does this really well? Stripe does this incredibly well. I think what's interesting about Stripe is they're absolutely crushing it. Sorry, I'm getting a bit dry. But their developer experience team is quite small. It's like 12 people. They really focus on flying less and writing more. So they're not going to every single conference, but what they are doing is creating amazing content that ties into really well-designed APIs. So it's video and amazing content. They're not constantly in the air, which again goes to the the kicking the hornet's nest earlier, that we can't be on the road all the time. Visual Studio Code. It's amazing, right? So that team, that's like 20 people that build it, 13 engineers. Many, many great software projects are small teams. It's only developer experience. There are no evangelists. Think of all the users they've got because of the experience they're creating for people that want to code in various languages. And I think that's an incredible phenomenon, and it's the mark of the work that Eric Gamma's done. MongoDB. Mongo gets a lot of shit, right? Loads of people are, oh, MongoDB, it's, whatever. They were created by marketing. That it's not the best database and all of this sort of thing. But the reason they won is that they were so accessible and easy. They caught a wave. It was like people needed a document database for JavaScript. They were just like, OK, we're going to use MongoDB. It was the easiest. It had great sort of language bindings. It felt good, so they used it. And it didn't happen because they spent a load of money on marketing, unless marketing is creating a great developer experience. Twilio. I think Twilio is really interesting because, they got to their IPO out of industrializing DevRel. It was amazing. They hit that hackathon wave so perfectly. Twilio was just like there at every hackathon. It was like, well, here's the moment when we're getting off the computer and onto the phone. And it was just the way they industrialized that. Sort of cities around the world working incredibly hard, and that really made Twilio. And I think it's quite interesting because that was definitely DevRel. It was great people getting involved in hackathons and getting people banging away on those APIs. IBM, totally different, obviously. So what do I want to say about IBM? So IBM is interesting. We've got some IBM people here, I know that, so I'm going to be slightly cautious. So from the top down, IBM's always sort of, are we interested in developers or not? We'll say we are, but we may not entirely be. Really interesting thing about the Red Hat acquisition is IBM moving down the stack, saying we actually do need to be talking to infrastructure people. But I think the thing that I think is really interesting about IBM is it's like Rome, right? It's just that it's people out in the provinces doing stuff. The team here in London is doing great work. The folks in Hursley doing incredible. Anyone here use Node-RED for IoT? Great platform. And it just sort of started out of people building stuff. It was engineering-led, and IBM just let them get on with it. So R&D, creating great experiences, it hasn't been a top-down phenomenon. Azure, I think, is interesting because, Jeff Sandquist says when he rejoined Azure from Twitter, it was all about creating amazing documentation. He was there to fix Microsoft documentation. Now, I like Jeff a lot, but I'm not sure he has fixed their documentation. However, he has hired everyone. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. The talent that he's got at his disposal now is incredible. Now, some of that is just the budget they've got. They've got these incredible franchises, so they'll invest in that. So, and it just goes on and on. Is Chloe here? No, oh, no, wait, Chloe can't? No? Oh, dang it. Anyway, the latest hire. So everyone is joining them because they're paying above market rate. And just it's a supportive environment. They've done a brilliant job of inclusion. The women on that team are going out and persuading other women to join them because of the great experience they're having. Absolutely smashing it. So it's like, yeah, this is great. We're doing really well. But DevRel is hard. It's like this. It's like debugging in production. It is really scary, right? You're out there, you're trying to get Wi-Fi to do your demo. That's breaking. You basically forgotten a string that you needed in your demo. Something's breaking. You're trying to work it out. You're working really hard. You're worried that you're not going to be able to keep the audience happy. There's a lot of nerves that go on in DevRel. We talk about imposter syndrome for a reason. We're always potentially in a room with people that are better at what they do in terms of the development than we are. It's part of the thing. It is a big challenge. In fact, any tech talk you ever do, that's the case. So imposter syndrome can be a thing. And I think that there's so much fear and hard work and emotional labor that you do in developer relations that's really not fully appreciated by the companies you work for. This to me, I mean, Paige Bailey, she's amazing. She left Jeff Sandquist's organization. What's the chance of that happening? So Microsoft hired everyone. Paige has just joined Google. But here's the thing. She said, yeah, I need a vacation. Yeah, I'm taking one on Saturday and Sunday. That's the weekend. What are you on about? What are you on about, vacation? That's not vacation. That's the weekend. Come on. So, that to me was I was like, and honestly, the Microsoft team is incredible. Honestly, I don't know, they haven't had a chance to say they're hiring. They are hiring. I want more people to join that company because so many of those people are my friends, and boy, are they doing a lot, and girl, are they doing a lot of miles. It's so much travel, and they're internalizing this, right? I mean, after a few years in DevRel life, this is a 29-year-old DevRel professional. They look pretty good when they started at 23, but let me tell you. Whew. So, here's the thing. The company is not your friend. They're really not. Companies are sociopaths. I actually don't think they're people either. They have voting rights and all that weirdness, but a company's not your friend. They might get acquired by somebody. They might have to do a resource action. The company is not and never will be your friend. They are by nature, they're not people, so they can't be your friend, right? And I think that we commit so much to them. We've done all this emotional labor on their behalf, but they're not your friend. And I think it's really important in developer relations that you remember that. No is your friend. Saying no to things is the most important thing that you can do in developer relations. Fly less, write more. Explain that you're going to spend time on documentation. Explain that you're not going to go to that conference. There are some great conferences, but you can't go to all of them. It will kill you. So just say no to things. You are really good at what you do. And not just that, but everyone is hiring. Right? You are amazing. You work incredibly hard. You inspire people every single day. And I think for me, thinking about this, the point of empathy for you, the point of sympathy for DevRel is exactly that. You have a choice, right? Reach out to your friends, spend time with your families, do self-care. How many of us are like, oh, I didn't have time to do the exercise I wanted to do, or I can't eat well when I'm on the road, or all of that stuff. You have choices. Say no to things, and as I say, everyone is hiring.